Hey there, viewers. Prisons are full of secrets, but some don't stay buried for long. One inmate caught Diddy doing something inside his cell, something he wasn't supposed to see. The next day, that inmate was found dead. And now, people are starting to ask the questions no one wants answered. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. 4 North Ain't Normal. I don't know how it started, not exactly. But I do remember the silence, that thick kind that wraps around your ears and makes your own breath feel too loud. It wasn't always like that on 4 North. Used to be loud as hell in here. People laughing too hard over nothing, arguing about cards, sometimes a fight popping off if someone lost more than they had. But the noise made sense. It was like the pressure valve that kept us from bursting. Then he showed up. I didn't even see him come in that first day, just heard the latch of a new cell and noticed the way people looked the other way when they passed it. Nobody said, "Yo, that's Diddy," or anything like that, but you could feel it. He had that air about him, the kind of air that made the room shift before you knew why. Real still, real cold, like he'd brought a different kind of time in with him, one where things didn't bounce back like they used to. "My name's Rico. Ricardo Morales, if you're being formal. I got 3 months left on a 6-year stint for a gun they found under my seat. Wasn't mine. Wasn't not mine either. I ain't the type to blame nobody, especially not this far in. I done my time mostly quiet, mostly out the way, learned early how to watch, listen, and keep my mouth shut. That's how you stay breathing in places like this. But ever since he landed in here, I've been feeling off, like my skin knows something my mind can't catch up to. I seen big names come through before, rappers, ball players, the types who cry through intake and think their names still mean something when the door shuts. But this one, he ain't say a word, ain't even look up at nobody, just walk to his cell like he'd been here before. Like maybe he never left. That's when the rhythm changed. People stopped posting up by the TV. You used to see folks bartering for chips or soups, cracking jokes. Now, you get maybe a few mumbled words during count, and even that's softer than usual. It's like we're all trying not to draw attention. I caught tiny dude in the bunk over from mine, weighs close to 350, folding his blanket real neat the other day. Never seen him fold anything in his life, but he said, "Don't want to upset the air," and wouldn't say another word. That kind of stuff sticks in your head. Even the guards feel it. One of them, Alvarez, used to joke with us, toss a snide comment now and then, but he walks quicker past Diddy's cell these days, doesn't linger. I watched him one night pause in front of it, hand twitching on the keys, then just move on like he changed his mind. You might think it's all in our heads, and maybe it is. A place like this does things to you. But I've been here long enough to know what normal prison weird feels like. This ain't that. This is different. First time I really knew something was off was about a week ago. I couldn't sleep. Been happening more and more. Lights, buzz too loud, my mind races, you name it. I usually pace a bit, hit the toilet, splash some water on my face. That night I walked the rows slow, dragging my feet just to feel the drag, like anchoring myself to something real. I was almost back to my bunk when I passed his cell. That's when I heard it. Whisper. Not the kind people use when they don't want to be heard. These were low, slow, like they were meant to be felt more than understood. My body froze before my mind even caught up. I leaned in just a bit, trying to make out what was being said. Couldn't catch words, just the tone. It wasn't normal, wasn't angry, wasn't sad. It was respectful, like he was praying, but not to God, to something else, nothing beneath. The cell door has this tiny slit you can peek through if you angle your head just right. I shouldn't have looked. I knew it even then, but I did. He was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, not moving, facing the back wall, and right in front of him on the concrete was a dark patch. No light hit it right. It didn't look like a stain or a shadow. It looked like absence, like the concrete had been peeled away and something deeper was underneath, waiting. He was whispering into it, real soft, real steady. He didn't blink. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for my knees to start hurting and for the sweat on my neck to go cold. I backed away, slow, like if I made a sound, something would turn and notice me. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, just laid there under my blanket, eyes wide, listening. Every shuffle of feet sounded like it was headed my way. I counted seconds, then minutes, then hours. When morning came, I tried to act like it didn't happen. Tried to tell myself it was just bad lighting, or maybe a dream. That always works, right? Just logic your way out of fear. I did okay with that, until I lifted my mattress to fix the sheet underneath. There's a piece of paper. I didn't put it there, I know I didn't. It was yellowed, like it'd been aged by fire or time. Smelled like plastic that had been melted. I unfolded it with the tips of my fingers, and there was a symbol drawn on it, like a circle made of sharp angles, almost like a speaker cone, but cracked, and under it 3 words. Not typed, not neat, jagged, almost carved into the paper with whatever was used to write it. He saw too much. I stared at it for a long time, thought about flushing it, thought about showing someone. Ended up folding it back and tucking it in the lining of my pillowcase. Why? I don't even know. Maybe I didn't want to be the only one who'd seen it. I've been walking different ever since, breathing quieter. Haim looked into that cell again, not once, but I swear I feel him watching sometimes. Like his eyes find you even when the wall's between you. I don't care who he used to be. I don't care how many songs he sold, how many parties he threw, or how many videos he danced in. That man in cell 217, that ain't a celebrity. That's a warning, the first smudge. I've walked this place too long to be spooked by flickering lights or busted feeds. MDC Brooklyn always hums like it's holding its breath. Grimy floors, stale recycled air, that buzz of fluorescent tubes overhead that never really goes away. You get used to the static after a while. You tune it out. You learn not to blink at shadows, because most of the time, it's nothing. Just the old bones of the building groaning under the weight of what it holds. But lately, something's changed. Not loud, not obvious, just off. You feel it in the rhythm, or more like the absence of one. Name's Alvarez. Ramon, but everyone calls me R. Alvarez to keep things formal. Night shift CO. I don't get the power trips like some of the other guys. I clock in, I do my rounds, I go home, it's a paycheck. Nothing noble about it. But I've been at this long enough to tell when something's quietly eating a place from the inside, and lately this whole block's been gnawed raw at the edges. Started a couple weeks back, maybe 3. Digital logs started glitching, small stuff, timestamps skipping back a second, files saving over themselves, door open logs not matching video playback. At first I figured it was the new software patch IT installed without running it past us, like always, but it wasn't just the logs. The cameras on 4 North began acting funny, not all the time, just when the feed passed over one specific cell. 217. That's the cell. The one housing Combs. Yeah, that Combs. I don't give a damn about his music. Wasn't my thing. But I know the name. Everyone here does. You'd think a guy like that would come in hot, puffed up, trying to throw weight around, but he didn't. He came in quiet. Didn't speak during intake. No demands, no looks. Just walked. Even the cuffs felt looser on him, like the metal didn't want to cling. Since he landed on 4 North, something's been wrong. The unit's too quiet. You can't put your finger on it, but the normal things, the tension, the bickering, the noise, they've all gone flat, like someone smothered the pulse of the place under a pillow. Last Tuesday, I started checking that feed more than I needed to. I told myself it was just habit, protocol. But the truth is, I was watching for something. Something I didn't want to admit I'd already felt in my bones. Every time I rewound the footage on 217, the image would bend. Not freeze, not go black, just ripple, like a heat wave rising off pavement, and when it corrected, the timer would skip forward 3 or 4 seconds, always around 2:30 to 2:40 a.m. I mentioned it to the warden. He barely looked up from his damn mug. Told me the system's old, the updates are buggy, and unless there's blood on the floor or a lawsuit at the gate, we let tech handle it on their own time. That's how things go here. Keep it moving, keep it quiet. So I kept it to myself. Then came Thursday night. Around 3:10 a.m. I was making rounds on 4 North when I saw Rico, Morales, I think his full name is, sitting up in his bunk, eyes wide open, sheets bunched in his fists like he just clawed his way out of a nightmare. I tapped the bars with my baton, asked if he was good. He didn't answer at first, just looked at me with that blank, wired stare inmates get when something real bad's circling their head. Then he spoke, low, like he wasn't sure he wanted me to hear him. Ing talks to it. I squinted. Who? He glanced over his shoulder, toward 217. Diddy, he's been talking to something that ain't there. I chuckled. I shouldn't have, but it slipped out. A reflex. He preaching to himself, huh? Pond. Rico shook his head, slow, not to himself. He's got someone, something, listening. I told him to try and sleep, that maybe the meds were messing with him, that hallucinations happen, especially under fluorescent lockdown lighting and no fresh air. He didn't argue, just laid back down. But he never closed his eyes. Still, something about the way he said it. Not panicked, not delusional. It stuck with me. It wasn't what he said. It was how calm he looked saying it, like he'd already accepted something he couldn't explain. I figured I'd walk the hall one more time and peek in on 217. I told myself I was being thorough. Truth was, I needed to see if Combs was doing something weird. Anything that would let me write it off. His cell was open to visual check, lights dimmed to low yellow. Inside was spotless. I mean, unnaturally clean. Nothing on the bed but the state-issued blanket, folded with edges sharp enough to slice. No soap on the sink ledge. No cup. No books. No radio. Just bare walls, polished floor, and Combs sitting up on the bed with his back straight and his hands on his knees, staring at the door. And smiling. Not big, not creepy, just faint. Like he was pleased I finally showed up. I stared at him for a moment, unsure if I should say anything. He didn't blink, didn't twitch, just kept that calm, faintly amused expression, like I'd confirmed something for him. I nodded once, broke the stare, and walked off without a word. My feet moved quicker than I meant them to. When I got back to the booth, I queued up the recording feed, set it to timestamp 313A1, cell 217. Watched it roll. Same as before. Ripple distortion for a few seconds, then skip. But this time, right before the glitch hit, something moved. A shape. Not big, not human. More like a smear in the image, like a stain that hovered in air. It moved against the light, not with it, like light passed through it wrong. It drifted upward, toward the corner of the screen, then everything pixelated. I scrubbed forward. When the feed came back, the cell looked normal again, except when the camera swung past Rico's bunk a few seconds later, I saw it. Above his head, smudge, floating, like someone dragged charcoal across the air. I rewound it 4 times. Same spot. Same shimmer. Not a trick of light. Not a bug on the lens. Something was hovering over him. Watching. I didn't report it. What would I even say? Hey, boss, the feed showed a floating black stain over an inmate's bed. I'd be laughed into the street. But I saved the clip to a private flash, just in case. Not to make trouble, just so I could be sure I wasn't imagining it. Just so if this whole place finally goes to hell like it's been threatening to, I'll have proof it started before anyone cared to admit. There's something happening on 4 North. I don't know what it is, but I know this. It's using him. Or maybe he's using it. Either way, the cameras don't lie. They just blur the truth long enough for you to look away. Question 3. Whispers don't echo here. Sleep don't come easy no more. I used to have a routine, count the tiles on the ceiling till my mind drifted, hum low to myself, think about my daughter's laugh. Not every night was perfect, but it kept me grounded. Now I just stare at the dark and wait for something to move in it. Ever since I peeked into 217, I haven't slept a full hour straight. That night did something to me. It cracked something open in my mind, and whatever came out, don't want to go back in. They gave me pills. After I filed the slip with counseling, not a full psych eval, just a note that I was experiencing disturbed rest and heightened auditory sensitivity. Nurse Bowers brought me 2 blue tabs and said they'd help me drift without dreams. I took them that first night. Dumb choice, I didn't drift. I fell into something too real to be just in my head. I saw the walls melting, but not like wax, more like they were bleeding. Not red, but something black and thick with bits in it that sparkled under the flickering light. The lights weren't just blinking either. They were flashing in patterns. Morse, I think. I don't know Morse, but my father did, and I swear I felt him in the flashes, like the lights were trying to spell something through my eyes and into my bones. A sound, too. Not quite a buzz, more like a hum that lived inside the base of my skull, a vibration that grew with every breath I took. By the time I came to, I was on the floor beside my bunk, sweating like I'd run a mile, my tongue bitten half through. That morning I didn't talk, didn't eat, just watched the door of 217 like it might open and swallow me whole. And the worst part? Diddy never looked back. He just sat there, calm, like he was holding the whole floor in his palm and we were the ones pretending not to feel it. The thing is, and I hate even thinking this, I got history. Not criminal, not violent, mental. When I was 19, back before the army, I got checked into a hospital. Mama said I stopped talking, just sat at the kitchen table humming for hours. Said I wrote weird symbols on the walls of my room. They called it early onset schizophrenia. But a year later, some new doctor said it was stress-induced psychosis, that it was reversible. I held on to that. I worked construction, stayed clean, stayed sharp, built myself into someone solid. But now, all this, it's bringing that old fear back. The fear that maybe I'm not right in the head, that maybe I never was. But then something happened that reminded me, this ain't all in my mind. There's this guy Kendrick, does laundry detail, tall with ash-gray eyes that look too old for his face. We never talked much, just nodded in passing. But a couple days ago, he sat beside me at breakfast, real deliberate, and slid a sugar packet across the table like it was a note. He said, "You looked." I froze. Didn't say nothing. He leaned in closer. Me too. Couple weeks back, I stood near his door too long, heard a voice behind me. Swallowed. As he shook his head. My brother's. Kendrick's brother died in '08. I remember hearing about it from someone who used to bunk with him. OD. No chance of faking it. I heard him clear as anything, Kendrick said. He said my name, laughed like he used to. Then it changed. The voice started saying things he'd never say. Dark things. Things I ain't never told nobody. I noticed then that Kendrick's nose was crusted around the edges, like dried blood. I asked if he'd gotten into a fight. Didn't hit nobody, he said, but it started bleeding the second I turned away from that cell. Didn't stop for 3 days. They gave me antihistamines, but I knew it wasn't allergies. I believed him. Every damn word, because something in his voice matched something in mine, a quiet kind of truth. The kind that makes you lonelier than lies ever could. That night, I took my pillow and went to the chapel during rec hour. Told the guard I needed space to pray. I didn't, not really, but I needed to feel something untouched. The chapel's small, barely more than a broom closet with a cross and a Bible on a podium. No windows, just stale air and cheap carpet that smells like lemon cleaner and mold. But it was away from 4 North. I sat in the back corner, held the Bible in my lap like it might steady me. I thought about all the noise in my head, the vibrations, the dreams, Kendrick's bleeding nose, the whisper from the cell I saw with my own damn eyes. And I remembered something my grandmother used to say when I was a kid, and the power would cut out during storms. Whispers don't echo, she'd say. They just sink. I don't know why it came back to me then. Maybe because the things I'd been hearing, they weren't bouncing, they weren't coming back at me. They were going somewhere deeper, somewhere past skin and sound. So I pulled the Bible open, found a blank space in the back and slid a piece of torn paper inside, wrote down one sentence in the cleanest print I could manage with my shaking hand. If I die, it wasn't from fear, it was from volume. I folded it once, tucked it behind the binding, closed the book. I don't think anyone's gonna find it in time. But maybe that's not the point. Chapter 4. They found him like that. Morning shift always smells like burnt coffee and ammonia. The mop crew rolls through first thing, trying to bleach away whatever the night left behind, and the rest of us pretend it works. I clocked in at 6:02 a.m. that day. Didn't feel any different at first, just the usual hum in the air, the buzz from the old vending machine by admins still shorting out every 30 seconds. But something was wrong. I could feel it before anyone said a word. I stepped into the corridor for 4 North, and the air was heavier. Not hot, not thick, just heavy, like it had weight, like it had listened to too much in the dark and couldn't hold it in anymore. The call came over the radio before I even made it to my post. Medical to 4 North, dormitory cell 6, unresponsive inmate. No urgency in the tone. They never panic over the radio. Doesn't mean it ain't serious. I jogged the rest of the way, saw the door was already open, 2 guards inside. One of them backed out quick, like he didn't want to be near it. I knew then it wasn't just some guy passed out from bad sleep. Who's Rico? Rico Morales. He was curled into himself on the bunk, knees pulled to his chest, arms over his ears, back tight like a wire about to snap. His eyes were open, mouth too, wide, like he was mid-scream. Only nothing was coming out, no sound, not even breath. You ever seen a scream stuck in someone's face? It's a kind of silence you don't forget. I stepped closer, tried not to breathe through my nose. Not because it smelled, it didn't. It was something else, like the air around him had been stripped out, like the space didn't know what it was supposed to be. No blood, no wounds, no vomit, just him. Frozen. And wrong. The nurse that came in with the med team, Jacobson, said it looked like seizure trauma, said sometimes people seize in their sleep and clamp up like that, but even he didn't sound convinced. I saw him hesitate when he went to touch Rico's wrist. like he was expecting to be shocked or something worse. The rest of the report was routine. Filed it within the hour. Probable seizure. No signs of external harm. Awaiting autopsy confirmation. Sanitized, neat, useless. But I knew better. I went straight to the monitoring room as soon as the hallway cleared. Pulled the timestamp logs. Rico's cell, 2:30 a.m. to 2:45 a.m. I scanned every second. Around 2:36, the feed started to blur, same as it always does when it passes by 217. Only this time, the distortion didn't just glitch, it breathed. The image seemed to swell for a second, like the pixels were trying to pull in. Then it snapped. Feed skipped, jumped straight to 239. When it came back, Rico was already like that. I leaned in, rewound, slowed it frame by frame. Just before the skip, there was a shimmer in the corner of the feed. Not a shadow, not a trick of the lens. It moved independently, hovering, like heat above pavement. Only it wasn't summer and there wasn't any damn heat. Fine. I paused it there, watched it blur the light, then watched it vanish. I saved the footage to a separate drive, again. I'm not even sure why anymore. Nobody listens, nobody wants to, but I needed a copy. For myself, if no one else. It wasn't until later that day I noticed something else. Something nobody thought to check. Every mirror on 4 North? Shattered. Or gone. One by the shower, cracked like spider webs. One by the exit, removed completely. Frame still bolted to the wall. One in the corner, rec room, taken down. Chain lying in a pile beside it like it had been yanked off mid-use. No one logged it, no incident report, no requisition for replacements. I checked the maintenance records, no entries, no cleanups, just silence. People say mirrors are just glass and backing, but I always thought they were more like memory. Places that hold your reflection even after you walk away. Something didn't want to be reflected anymore, and it sure as hell didn't want Rico seeing anything that might have been looking back. I went to the chapel that afternoon. Not because I'm religious, I ain't, but because it was the only quiet place left, where it didn't feel like the air was watching me. The chaplain was sitting in the corner, writing in a notebook. Real gentle, slow kind of man. Doesn't say much, unless it matters. He looked up when I walked in and said, "You heard then?" I nodded. He closed his notebook. "Did you see what was missing?" I squinted. "What do you mean?" He stood, went over to the podium and pulled the Bible out from underneath it, opened it gently, flipped through to the back. Nothing there. The inmate Morales. He came in here 2 nights ago, said he needed space to pray, sat right where you're standing now. When I came back, he was gone, but the Bible had a note inside, folded tight in the back pages. Now it's gone. I felt my stomach twist. I asked him what the note said. He looked at me real slow. I didn't read it, but I held it. It was vibrating. He said it like he was ashamed to believe his own memory. That's when I made the mistake of checking 217 again. Just one last time before the end of shift. I don't know what I expected, maybe Diddy just sleeping, or pacing, something normal, but I stepped close to the glass, flicked the light to do my check, and froze. On the inside of the cell door, scratched deep into the paint, small but deliberate, was a word. Listener. All caps, jagged strokes, fresh. Diddy was sitting on the edge of his bunk, hands in his lap, looking up at me. Eyes soft, calm, not smiling, not angry, just watching. Like he knew what I'd seen. Like he knew I'd finally heard it too. I turned off the light, didn't say a word, just walked away. Some people think silence is peace, but that's only when it belongs to you. This silence, it belongs to something else. Chapter 5. The interview that wasn't logged. They didn't tell me why they needed me. Not really. Just that there'd been a death, and that standard protocol required a federal psychological evaluation of the inmate at the center of it. Pre-trial sanity assurance, they called it. Cold language, process language. But it meant one thing. Someone was worried this man might be unfit to stay. When I arrived at MDC Brooklyn, I'd already skimmed the summary file. Sean Combs, known globally, allegations dark enough to taint a career built over decades. I expected deflection, narcissism, maybe rage dressed in calm. High-profile defendants often come in armed with ego, sure that their name alone is shield enough. I've spent 15 years watching that illusion crack behind one-way's glass. But what I walked into that day wasn't ego. It was absence. They led me to a small, repurposed room, thick-walled, no windows, old padded chairs that creaked when you shifted too much. The camera in the upper corner was blinking red. Active, I assumed. It always is. But I'd later find that assumption premature. He was already seated when I entered, no restraints, hands resting lightly on his knees, eyes focused on the floor as if he'd just been speaking to it. I introduction myself. Dr. Lee Marin, Federal Psych Evaluator, contracted through 871C Division. I'd like to ask you a few. I know your voice, he said, without lifting his eyes. The words slid into the room like they'd always been there, waiting to be noticed. I paused. We haven't met. He looked up then. I heard you speak, he said, in sleep. Before they brought you here. I reminded myself not to react, not externally. Keep the face blank, the breathing slow. Sean, I said carefully, have you experienced auditory hallucinations recently? His head tilted, slow, not questioning, listening. You still think consciousness is shaped like a flame, he said. But it's tape, reel to reel, recording over itself again and again until the hiss gets louder than the voice. Are you hearing voices now? No, he said, and for the first time he met my eyes fully. I'm remembering transmissions, fragments that drift, frequencies that loop so long they forget their origin. When they forget, they search. I mark a pause, took a slow breath. This wasn't the first time I'd dealt with dissociative language. It wasn't even the strangest. But something in his voice, not what he said, but how he said it, unsettled me. He wasn't confused. He wasn't grandiose. It was clear. You're referring to memories? I asked. Trauma? He blinked once, a subtle movement. Then, you think memory is inside you, but you're wrong. It's played through you. He shifted then, slowly raising his right hand and drawing a line across the air. Not random, measured, like he was outlining something invisible. A waveform. It was a vessel before the signal knew I was listening, he said. Now it speaks through others. They think they see me. They don't. They see the resonance. I opened my recorder, wanting to capture the exact rhythm of his speech, the cadence, the words. I watched the red light blink, steady and sure. You believe you're being controlled, Sean. Not controlled, he murmured. Transmitted. He leaned forward just slightly, just enough to shorten the air between us. Volume, he whispered. Is permission. There it was again, the quiet invocation. The same word that had appeared in Rico's supposed letter, if the rumors were true. I felt my skin tighten along the back of my neck. You're referring to Rico Morales? You did, he said. Didn't know how to tune out. Old radios hum long after you turn them off, especially when the station isn't local. The phrase made no rational sense, and yet it landed with a weight that I couldn't shake. My throat was dry. I forced myself to flip to the next page in my notepad, as if action could stabilize thought. "And what is your role in all this, Sean?" His expression didn't change, but his answer did. "I'm not a role, I'm the loop." For a long while after that, he said nothing more, just stared. Not hostile, not engaged, just still, like a needle waiting to drop on a record that hadn't been pressed yet. I ended the session after 20 minutes, though it felt like longer. He didn't rise, didn't speak again, just watched me walk out. The hallway outside felt colder than when I entered. Back in the secure debriefing office, I pulled the recorder from my pocket. I wanted to play it back, to log the session properly, by the book. I plugged it into the port, waited for the file directory to load. Nothing. No sessions, no timestamp, just one unnamed file. I clicked it. White noise. Low static. It pulsed slowly, like breath. I ran a spectrum analysis just to be sure. I couldn't help myself. It wasn't truly static. It was a single tone, oscillating at a frequency just shy of normal voice range, like a whisper run through a machine. Beneath it, something rhythmic, something almost musical, like a loop that had degraded from too many plays. I unplugged it, tossed it into the padded briefcase, and walked out of MDC without signing out. Calmed. I haven't returned. I filed the required evaluation, of course, digitally signed and sealed, restricted access. But I added a personal addendum, a separate note, not for the court, not for the trial, for whoever has to sit across from him next. Subject is not psychotic, subject is not sane, subject is a transmitter. Chapter 6. Shoe transfer denied. I've seen my share of things working in this place. Stabbings, hangings, blood spread thin across tile like it was trying to write something. I've walked past men chewing on their own tongues, stripping skin from their arms like it didn't belong to them. Madness isn't rare in MDC. It's bred here, grown slow in corners the mob crew never reaches. But never, never have I felt fear quite like this, not until 217. After Rico's death, something in me flipped. Not panic, not right away, just a heavy sense that things were falling inward. And the worst part, everyone knew it. You could see it in the way the other COs lingered less, in how even the loudmouth inmates went quiet when they passed Diddy's cell, like they could all hear something beneath the hum of the lights, and didn't want to admit it. I tried to be the one who did, tried to bring it up. I filed the request at 6:04 a.m., a full transfer requisition to SHU, said Diddy posed a destabilizing threat to the psychological well-being of Unit 4 North. I used the right language, cold, clean, procedural. I didn't talk about shadows or sound loops or whispers that ride static. I said things like isolation necessary for preemptive containment and pending additional psychological clearance. I made it sound like a formality, like concern. The warden called me into his office less than an hour later. He didn't even close the door. "Of those," he said, not looking up from his screen. "You're asking for a SHU placement for a federal detainee under trial protection. You realize that's not a call I can make. I know it's unusual. It's not unusual, it's prohibited. Orders came down weeks ago. He stays where he is, no movement, not unless it's trial or a medical emergency." He swallowed. "With respect, sir, he's already created one of those." He looked up then, not angry, tired. Like I'd forced him to admit something out loud he'd rather leave in the dark. "What happened to Morales was unfortunate," he said, "but you're chasing ghosts. You want to go digging into the dark, go ahead. Just don't bring me a bucket when you come up empty." I started to respond, but he raised a hand. "You're burned out, Alvarez. I've seen it before. That floor gets into your head. Take a week. paid, no report, just clear yourself. Dismissed just like that. I didn't argue, just nodded, stepped out, and walked down to the east server room. I still had access. They hadn't revoked it yet. I knew the folder I needed. Off the main tree, buried behind nested directories. Most COs didn't even know it existed. Backup feeds, uncompressed, no frame smoothing, the raw signal. I copied the segment from Rico's last night onto a private drive. I told myself I wouldn't look at it until I got home. I lied. The minute my front door shut, I locked it, pulled every curtain, turned off the TV, sat down at the kitchen table, slid the USB into my laptop, and opened the file. Frame by frame. At first, nothing stood out. Rico lying in bed, tossing, turning. The timestamp hovered near 2:35 AIE. I clicked through slowly. Then the distortion started. I'd seen it before. The shimmer that passed through footage like a wave bending glass. But this time, I let it roll. Let it build. And that's when I saw it. Just behind Rika's bunk, maybe a foot above the mattress. A shimmer. Not a blur, not a glitch. A shape. Humanoid. Slight. No limbs, not clearly, but torso-shaped. Floating. It wasn't just there. It was vibrating. Like every inch of it pulsed with a rhythm you couldn't hear, but your stomach felt anyway. A vibration that pulled at the lines of the screen, and right then, as I zoomed in, I noticed something else. Diddy, visible through the far corner of the feed. Sitting on his bunk, perfectly still, but his chest rose and fell, and the shimmer pulsed in sync with it. Breathe in. Replay. Breathe out. Shift. Like the thing behind Rico wasn't separate. It was connected. Resonating. Like a tether. I hit pause. My hands were shaking, my mouth dry. I didn't even realize I'd stood until my chair scraped back hard across the tile. I rushed to the sink and vomited. Not just once, the kind that comes up hard and keeps coming, like something old had been sitting in my gut and finally got shaken loose. When I looked up into the mirror above the sink, the one I wiped clean every morning, it was cracked. A clean, jagged split right down the middle. I hadn't touched it. I backed out of the kitchen, closed the laptop, sat on the floor, knees to my chest, like Rico. I kept thinking of what Diddy said to that evaluator, the part I wasn't supposed to hear but did anyway, from a hallway recorder that kept running too long. Volume is permission, and I wondered, if you listen long enough to silence that isn't yours, does it start listening back? Chapter 1, Chapter 7, The Sound That... I've held the hands of dying men who believed they were already in hell. I've whispered comfort into ears still bleeding from fresh beatings. I've read scripture over body bags, watched men break down in the corner of a concrete chapel and beg for salvation they no longer believed in. In a place like MDC Brooklyn, being a chaplain means learning to translate desperation into ritual, but nothing I've seen. Not war zone faith, not prison panic, not even the trembling silence of lifers on their final appeal. Nothing prepared me for cell 217. It started with a letter, a small envelope, yellowed at the edges, postmarked from a halfway house in Queens. No return name, but I knew who it was before I opened it. The handwriting was raw, written like every word hurt to pull into existence. My son died in your care. His name was Rico. He believed something evil was in your building. I know how that sounds, but I saw the shape in his eyes before the call came. I saw the way he stopped talking like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. I'm not asking for an answer. I'm asking if anyone else saw it. If someone told you the truth, please don't let him vanish like he was crazy. There was a phone number I didn't call. I couldn't, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew if I heard her voice, I might not be able to lie to her, and there was no comfort in the truth. So I did the only thing left that felt right. I visited him. They still call him Diddy, even here. It clings to him like perfume, like smoke, like a name that's outlived the man it was made for. I signed the log, asked the guards to bring him to the chapel. They refused, said he didn't leave 4 North, said there were orders, conditions, restrictions. Fine. I said I'd go to him. They gave me clearance, too quickly, no hesitation, like they were glad someone else wanted to carry the burden for a few minutes. The hallway to 4 North felt narrower than usual. Lights flickered, not broken, just off rhythm, like they were blinking in response to something behind the walls. I passed the cell where Rico died. I didn't look in. I already knew what I wouldn't see. 217 was open. He was already seated when I stepped in, cross-legged on the center of the mattress like he was meditating, hands resting palm up, eyes closed, breathing slow. It felt wrong to speak first, so I didn't. I waited. Then he hummed. No words, just a tone, soft, controlled. Not from his mouth, not exactly. It started in my bones, a vibration that pushed up through the floor and into my shins. I opened my mouth to speak, but the air inside it was too thick, like the sound was pushing the words back down. The light in the hall outside flickered twice, then stayed steady, but the hum didn't stop. It shifted, subtle, like it had found a second note, a harmony that shouldn't exist in a single tone. He opened his eyes. They weren't dead eyes. That would have been easier. They were alive, calm, and deep in the worst way. Not like a void, like a tunnel. A passage. You look into a tunnel and you realize it isn't darkness you fear. It's what might be watching from the other side. This isn't madness, he said. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't move. But the air twisted when he spoke, like the syllables cut through it with weight. It's replication? I wanted to ask what he meant. I couldn't. My voice was still missing. My tongue felt too large for my mouth. Beal, he continued. They always think it starts with speech, with words. But it doesn't. It starts with vibration, pattern, repetition until identity surrenders. Here I felt it then, the Hume rising. It wasn't coming from him anymore. It was coming from beneath the floorboards. The low, slow tremor, like something buried deep under the concrete, was awakening, not crawling, but resonating. I could feel the chapel in my mind, like I'd walked back to it without moving. I could feel the cross on the wall humming, the pages of the Bible rustling with breath that wasn't mine. You let them in when you listened, he said. All you had to do was hear it. Now it will loop. It has form now. I backed out. Step by step. He didn't follow. He didn't blink. The hum pulsed once more, hard enough to rattle the badge on my chest, and then it stopped. Silence. Not peace. Not emptiness. Just the space that waits between loops. I returned to the chapel an hour later. The place smelled wrong. Not smoke, not sweat. Something sharp and sterile, like a hospital room sealed too long. The cross above the podium had tilted. The Bible was open to no page at all. I sat in the pew, picked up my pen. My final sermon was one sentence. Hell doesn't burn, it vibrates. The tape that survived. It came in a plain manila envelope, no return address. Just a smudge where a name might have been, and a postage stamp half torn, like it had tried to hide where it came from. It was slipped through the slot of our building's side entrance sometime during the night, not the front, not the drop box for tips, just the side, where no one ever went, where no one had access. Inside, a single USB drive. No note, no label. Just the weight of something that had waited too long to be watched. I sat down at my desk, clicked on the lamp, and plugged it into a quarantined terminal. Not my work laptop, not our shared cloud. I'd learned by now to treat the unexplained with distance. For weeks, we'd been chasing the fallout of the Combs trial, trying to get through sealed files and redacted memos, trying to talk to sources who no longer picked up, who suddenly stopped replying to even burner messages. But this was different. There was one file, video, no extension. I had to force it open with custom tools, frame rate irregular. No Kodak header, but it played. The feed was from 4 North. Static lines streaked the top, but the rest was surprisingly clean. The timestamp put it 2 nights before the trial started. I recognized the layout immediately. Bunks, communal space. The soft light of the security LEDs giving everything a sickly yellow tone. I fast forward. 2:31 AUM. Rico shifts in his bed. Twitchy. Sweating. He sits up suddenly, eyes wide, staring at something across the dorm. Then it happened. The part we were told was lost. The skipped segment. The gap. This version didn't skip. It bridged. I watched, breath holding itself hostage in my throat as Rico slowly got to his feet. He wasn't sleepwalking, he was awake, aware. His steps were deliberate, quiet. He moved across the room like someone approaching a church altar, reverent. He stopped in front of cell 217. The camera angle was tilted slightly, but you could just make out the figure inside, sitting, still, watching. Rico leaned in, pressed both hands to the glass. His mouth moved once. "I hear you now," he whispered. The audio caught it, faint, grainy, but real. Many collapsed. No struggle, no delay, just a straight vertical fall, like someone had cut his strings mid-thought. He hit the floor hard enough to echo one sharp, lifeless sound. And just before the frame began to blur, before the footage spiraled into static again, something flashed above Diddy's bunk. A symbol. I recognized it instantly. The same broken circle, the jagged angles like a speaker cone cracked down the center, the one Rico had described in his writing, the one no one believed existed. But the feed didn't just show it. It burned it onto my screen, a flash of light. Then the monitor's temperature spiked. The symbol glowed on the glass. Not within the software, not part of the frame, but on the display itself, as if it had seared through the digital and carved itself into the real. For a split second it pulsed, then faded. I yanked the drive. The screen stayed dim, dead. Then, from the laptop speaker, without warning, came a whisper. One voice, not male, not female, not human in the way that mattered. It didn't sound inside the room. It sounded through as it wasn't the sacrifice, it said. He was the tuner. The words felt wrong in my ears, like I'd just given permission to something I didn't understand. I shut the lid, stepped back, and stared at the machine like it might start speaking again. But it didn't. Silence returned, but not peace. I didn't log the file. I didn't report the envelope. I didn't upload or leak a second of what I saw. Because I understood something then. Something no editorial meeting or legal review could prepare you for. And this story doesn't want to be published. It wants to be played. It wants new ears. I slipped the drive into a padded case, locked it in my drawer. Somewhere deep down, I knew that wouldn't be enough. Not for what it was, not for what it did to Rico, not for what it almost did to me. I told myself I wouldn't listen again. But even now, with the laptop dead and the room still, I can hear it. Low, beneath the floorboards, waiting for the next one to tune in.